Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first four or more. That show you probably never heard of, where we talk about the first four episodes of a show,
It's
and then
been a
if people are
while.
interested, we'll keep going. Wasn't so popular, so we just stuck with the album reviews. But then what's the show we're talking about today?
Today we're doing When They See Us, which is a Netflix original kind of series or whatever, mini
Yeah.
series.
So it came out yesterday when we're recording this. Today it is the 8th of June, so I believe it came out yesterday.
Yeah.
And my name is Holden Stephan Roy.
I am your lady friend, Bonnie.
And I was looking into what albums we were going to review and all the normal. And then Mr. Jonathan Barnes appeared in the comments and said, you should check out this show. I'd love to hear what you think about it. And then something to the effect of, if I could get through all four episodes without crying, I would be a bigger man than him. So that's what I went in with. I was like, I'm not going to cry. Fuck that shit. I don't know. I didn't know what I was getting into either. I didn't really look into it much.
Yeah.
I opened up.
I kind of went in blind as well.
Yeah, I said to Bonnie, I'm going to talk about this. Jonathan Barnes says it's going to be next level, like subject matter wise. So we should discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
And then opened up Netflix right there in the front fucking page. There it was.
Yeah.
So I hit play. Bonnie had no idea. And then we just started watching, and holy fuck. Like, I'll be honest, I got through the first episode without tears, but like...
You know I did not. I got through nothing, not like...
All right.
Like any amount of time without any tears. I'm going to cry on this episode.
So we don't really have like a formal structure here. Allow me to just break down a timeline. It is currently 5:25 p.m. on Saturday. Right before bed yesterday, we watched episode 1. Around noon, we blitzed it, and it took a while. It's like almost 4 hours at that point. And then
maybe even a little bit more, because I think some of the episodes are like a minute, like 5 or an hour,
it was like hour
5
20
or something.
hours. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Today, about 4 hours. And then while the emotions are all still raw, we haven't even had a chance to digest or think. Here we are talking to you on the internet about this show. So I figured we just kind of run through the episodes, and spoiler alert, there's going to be spoilers, because I don't even know how to do this kind of thing without being a spoiler sport. But honestly, don't watch this if you haven't seen it yet, unless you have no intentions of watching it and you're using us to cut down on the time, which if you are, I'd love to know in the comments. Anyway.
It's worth watching. We'll tell you now.
Yeah, so in the first episode, it starts off, and you kind of get introduced to the different characters. And I'd like to just state all of the names now, because they're fucking very respectful. But I'd also like to just point out the age of all of them at the point of the first episode. So we have Yusuf Salam, and if I say anything wrong, sorry, he's 15. Antron McCrae, he's 15. Raymond Santana, he's 14. Kevin Richardson, he's 14. And Corey Wise, he's 16. Of this squad, I believe Yusuf and Corey are the only two who know each other.
Yeah.
And so you're introduced kind of in that way, where your 4 separate little vignettes are going on of the different characters being brought in. We know the year is 1989. And
April 19th.
They're rolling on through, and there's some chaos going on. It's not like super clear what's happening.
Yeah. Like you're just seeing like a bunch of kids running, and you're not really sure what's going on, and people are joining, but you're not really sure like why. Like, are there riots? Like, what's happening?
And then Corey is on a little date with his little girlfriend, and Yusuf and his buddies bang on the glass, come, and she's like, don't go, stay with me. Women tend to know things. And then he goes, and they go into like the park place, and anyway, they stumble across this woman who is all like destroyed and shit, and just lying there, and there's a whole bunch of chaos going around, and it's just almost like they all just kind of arrive around the same point. I don't even know if they were all saw the body or anything. Like, I don't really.
I think
know.
I think it was somebody that got beat up. I don't think it was.
Well, okay, because it's kind of like hazy for me, this part of it. It was very hectic. But you know that you saw this person, the cops arrive. One of them, I believe it's Kevin, gets smashed in the head with a helmet from the cops as they're getting arrested.
Yeah.
And so it's just a little bit hectic. Anyway, they end up somehow coming up. But yeah, so they just kind of stumble. They're all in the area of this woman who has been unfortunately raped by somebody. And in this night, as I find out later on, it was, or right away, it was just a bunch of teenagers, like a large group, and there were crimes being committed and people were kind of being assaulted. So in this ruggamaroo, what was known to the police and shit is a bunch of black or ethnic kids was running around. And then all 5 of these boys were just kind of innocuously and innocently in the area. And then the next thing you know, they're all getting kind of arrested and picked up. I think maybe a couple at the point of it. And then they get a list of names. They go and pick up Yusuf. They're kind of like casing the area. And then...
And Corey goes along...
just to like show support. Like
he's not on the list, but he just goes to like help out his friend. And he's going to stick with his friend.
And so, yeah, like, and you just see him and you just like know that that's kind of like a bad idea, but he kind of gets into the car and then they go down, but like none of these kids have any idea what the fuck's happening, right? And they're all young. And then the cops just kind of end up bringing them all into separate rooms, except for Corey. Corey's just kind of on a bench waiting because at this point nothing's going on with him. One of them, I don't remember if it's Yusuf or Antron, or one of them has an ID that says he's legally 16, so they treat him a certain way even though he's actually 15 and it's a fake ID. And you just start watching as like the cops start to brutally like terrorize these kids. Like at first nothing's going on, right? At first they're all just kind of sitting there like they've been picked up.
Yeah.
But then you like flip over and there's blonde chick lawyer lady and other chick lawyer lady. Or I don't know, I think one's a lawyer and one's an investigator. And then there's just everybody looking at these maps and trying to case together what's going on, because there was a rape that occurred. Mm-hmm. And it is a serious situation, and
they're just putting the blame onto these kids.
Well, there was almost like a deliberate choice at a certain point where these 5 kids who they had or whatever, or 4 kids, I guess, who don't know each other, right? That's something that we might not have mentioned. This is going to be all over the place. They don't know each other, these 4 kids. The only ones who know each other, like I said, are Corey and Yusuf. So 4 strangers kind of brought together, and then they have like these maps and shit, and they're looking at it. And I feel like they were all just from different areas and had their own little unique timelines in the police's eyes. And then all of a sudden they decided, we got these 5 kids or 4 kids. They're all black. Or one's Hispanic, sorry. That they're not just like witnesses. That's our people. Like they just decided.
Yeah.
And you find out a little bit later on that it has everything to do with internal office politics and like kiss ass efforts and shit. Like
it just comes at such like a stupid fucking cost.
It's like they, and like as they on the lawyer timeline and like the police side of things go over the next like day or two, they decide instantly that these kids did it, and then all of a sudden they're like handcuffing them to like chairs and shit. And remember their ages. Like all of them 14. But Corey, all of them that are getting interrogated at this point are under the age of 16, which means, if I'm not mistaken, you can, because I'm not really that familiar with New York law, but you can't be tried as an adult.
But I think it's also that you need to have a parent present.
Right.
I think that's like a pretty like...
So like all of that...
Pretty big deal.
Because you're not like adult yet. Like you're still a kid in the eyes of the law. And so they start like terrorizing these kids and asking them questions. And they're like saying shit like, what's a rape? I don't really know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm not like, you know, like you can just tell that like it was just coercion, right? Like
they didn't understand what they were saying.
And the next, you know, they just start pressuring them, and then the varying parents start to like show up and intervene in their own way. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which ones it was. It
was Antron's.
Antron's dad?
Yeah.
Antron's dad is a particular highlight here, just to show like the level of police fuckery that was going on. It was like the cops submitted a mission and they needed to get testimony of the kids because they had no evidence. That's something we forgot. So there's this lack of evidence, right? And And you got to keep in mind, this is a true story. Because, man, it's real shit. Like, this isn't some fake shit that went on. Like,
Yeah.
it actually happened like this. So to coerce these teenagers into corroborating that they were guilty of this rape situation so that police people could get promotions and shit and look real fire in the eyes of everybody.
And the woman, her name was Trisha Mealy.
Is that blonde one or other one?
No, the one who got raped.
Oh.
Like she, like, you know, she was like hanging on, you know, like she was in critical condition, like, so nobody was sure.
Coma.
Like if she had like died, like then it would have also been like murder, and you know, at this point it was attempted murder, which is, it's just terrible. Like these are huge like charges against like these kids, and then, with no proof.
Then they like get them all to like write up these like statements. If I'm not mistaken, they do all this writing, and you watch as each version of it, they're just saying, oh, so you saw so and so like hold her down, right? Yeah, so and so held her down. Yeah, that's what's up.
Like they're just making up, they're agreeing with them, like they're just, because they were told like they could, you know, if you just give us a statement, you're gonna be free, you can go home.
They didn't necessarily say you'll be free, they said you can go home. Now you have to understand, this is like kind of, they're not lying, but they're also not being completely truthful, these police officers. The police are just kind of sneaky and shit. I remember one time I was 18 years old, or 17 or 18, I don't remember. And I was working at a video store, and I got held up, right? Some dudes busted in and like jacked some shit. I firmly remember Buddy stumbling over the counter. I find that to be a humorous part of the story because it's kind of funny if you try to rob a store and you fall over. It's funny. Still, about a week, 2 weeks go by, and the next thing you know, the cops is like asking me to like come in and have a little conversation about some shit. You know, I thought whatever. I go down, and the next thing you know, they're basically trying to get me to say anything that is incriminatory or whatever. It was fucking weird. It was like all of a sudden I'm some suspect motherfucker, and they didn't really investigate anything. They were just like reaching for straws, but it was almost like they were like pressuring you to just come up with any kind of fabrication if you want to go home or whatever. Now I was a grown up and completely innocent, and you know, it's a very different circumstance than 89 and whatnot. So I can't, well, my whole point is I understood actually what it feels like to be kind of sitting in a room and having these cops staring at you and realizing if you say the wrong fucking thing or whatever, you have no idea when you're gonna get let go. And I was only in the room for 90 minutes and I chicken shitted out, and it was fucking scary, and thank God I didn't say anything stupid, you know? So while I'm watching these kids sitting there, I'm thinking about that experience, and this is like amplified by like a bajillion, right? Like this is some fuckery, right? Because we're not talking about theft of a fucking video store, we're talking about rape.
Serious
violent
shit.
Fucking crimes and shit. And the cops have them like handcuffed. They don't let them go to the bathroom. They don't let them eat. They don't let them sleep.
Like it was just
We're
like
talking
hours.
like
It was like days.
they don't tell their parents. So the parents, you kind of cut to them all worrying and shit. And then all of a sudden, like, they have these big old paper notes of these stories and whatever. And then they're trying to get everybody to sign it. Like, yo, if you sign it, which is basically signing a motherfucking confession. Now, what you realize as you're watching is that none of these kids understand what the fuck the implications of a rape is.
No.
Nobody explained the charges that were involved here. And that it gets worse, right? Because if you think this is bad, it gets fucking worse, right? Because of the 4 kids that they had or whatever, all of their parents come and shit. They go home because they were being processed. But what about, I'm like, there were different stories, right? So we'll get to that, because Antron's story, like we were saying, is kind of fucked up, right? So Antron's dad kind of like walks in, right? Not the mom. The mom's she was there too.
She was there too.
So the mom's there, and then they kind of like trying to coerce him into talking. They're like, this is bullshit. Can't you hear what the fucking kid is saying? Blah, blah, blah. And then they ask the mom to leave. And then they kind of like go outside and they pull the dad to the side and they're like, look, you got this nice little job here, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm a good citizen now. I do my shit, you know, proper. And they're like, listen, does your boss know that you used to be a convict? Does your boss know that shit? You know, how would that go down, right? And they basically are like, if you do not tell your son to cooperate with us, then you will, in fact, basically lose your job. and your entire credibility and blah, blah, blah. So then daddy goes back in and tells his kid to cooperate with the cops for the sake of the family. The cops will do anything to destroy us all, etc., etc. It's completely self-serving. Like, this guy is not really caring about his son so much as his own ass in this moment, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then he gets all mad when the kid's like, but I'm not going to lie. I don't want to lie. This is wrong. And then, anyway, he ends up agreeing. And again, the cops are leading him on. Like, so Kevin, this, that, the next thing. One of the moms, and do you remember which one? I think maybe it was Yusuf's mom, gets him out of there before he signs a paper. And he's completely clear. The rest of the three kids, Raymond, he signs the paper because he's been pressured there too. And again, these kids don't know each other, right? So they're hearing this whole like fucking story told through the cops. This guy's snitching on you. This guy's confessing on you. Yeah. And then there's always they all had a good cop, bad cop moment too, where the good cop guy comes in and basically and it's just like textbook bullshit. Manipulation tactics on these teenagers. Anyway, you were gonna say something?
I don't know what I was gonna say, but yeah, I mean, it was pretty brutal watching it, and you're just like, these kids are suffering, and they're scared shitless, they're terrified, like they don't even understand what happened, and so they're just making stuff up to like appease the cops. Like they're like, well, where did this happen in the park? And like one points to like a map, and it's completely like not in like the same area at all where the rape happened, and like just things like that. And like they just like, it's just so obvious that they had no idea what was going on.
Or like, I think it was like Yusuf is like, yeah, like we did the rape, but like I didn't do it. I pretended. I wasn't like the other guys. I just pretended to do the rape. Or like it was this.
That wasn't Yusuf. That was Kevin. I think.
Either way, it's hard to keep track of it all. It took a couple of episodes to fully map out everything what was going on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, and then you just kind of watch all the parents get them out and stuff. But then little Corey's just sitting there, and then they're going over all of the stories, and they realize that nobody confesses to anything. Everybody just implicates everything else. Nothing matches up. They realize that, I mean, this is the cops. They realize that the water tower and shit is like a reference point. It's at the wrong spot in reference to the water tower. All sorts of crap's going on, and they realize they have nothing.
Their story's like very flawed and very like just doesn't make sense.
And you can watch like the lawyer lady kind of being like, yo, these are obviously not our kids. This is not right. But then cop lady, or I'm going to call Blanche cop lady, she's just like, you know what? We need to get the win. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be like this. And then for the rest of it, you just watch her start pitching the idea to people like they're already guilty, and just applying this spin so that it's almost like everybody's looking for it. There's some sock that gets found with semen in it, and like
that gets hidden, like that doesn't get told like until like they're in court,
which is in the second episode, but whatever. And then like all this shit's just going on, and then little Corey Wise is just kind of sitting there. And then they realize they have this extra kid who's friends with the next one there. So they just kind of grab him. They start beating the shit out of him and basically are like, yo, you're just going to confess and you're going to like tell us what the fuck happened and make sure to put the right location, right? So they almost like, that's what's going on. You have to do it.
Fix their problem.
And they basically are like, you have to do it. We need to find a person and whatever. And they got to realize Corey was innocent as fuck in all regards. He wasn't even on a list or anything. He just went along because he wanted to make sure his friend was okay. Mm-hmm. Right? You just see that loyalty in him. He's just sitting there. He fell asleep and everybody kind of forgot about little Corey. And then the cop just beats the shit out of him. And then something we come to see is Corey I don't know how to say this politely, he's not the smartest tool in the shed in regards to his understanding of things. Like we come to find out
he's a good kid and he cares about people. You can you get to know that. But
he can't read as an example. It's something we'll find out later on. But it's worth thinking about at this point when you know that, right? Because they make him write out this confession. They make him sign it. Then they coach him through this video thing where he says noteworthy things like, yeah, this is my first time ever being like excessive towards a woman. This is my first rape. This is my first rape. I promise I'm never going to do a rape again. And like the way he's saying it, right?
He doesn't know what he's saying.
It kind of sounds almost like he like threw a ball through a window or some shit. Like in his mind, it doesn't equate that rape is what it is and that there's charges. Or like for the Spanish kid, it's like they tell the dad and shit, like, or one of the dads, that son is gonna be allowed to go home as long as like he oh no, this was again Antron's dad. He's like, yeah, your son will be allowed to go home if he admits to rape. And like he's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense because the cops told him that shit, right? And they just trusted the police that this was fine for some reason.
Well, and I think also that they're weary being, you know, these black kids in the hands of these white cops being, you know, with these crazy charges. And then he's just like, you know what, it's better to just go along with it than to, you know, for my kids to get hurt, kind of. Like, I think there's also that thought behind it, but I don't know, in like a weird way.
It's almost like you can kind of see how the cops exploit the ignorance,
yeah, absolutely,
on purpose, strategically break
Yep.
it down. Like, I mean,
Like,
you look at it like
their
today
benefit.
and now, and you think about it like today and now, and it's like, how the fuck would you, like, you admit to rape, you're done. Like, you can't put that shit on camera. You were so cautious today. But, like, back then, it's almost like little Corey didn't even know what he was saying. And you see him sitting there with his little Pepsi can. And it's almost like they baited him into
Like,
this
he's just
comfortable
like
setting and let him go and let him incriminate himself. But all things considered, you have him, instead, everyone else is, like, pointing fingers. He's like, yeah, I just did the rape. I did it. And it's like the way he says it, it's just like, oh, man, it hit me really hard. And then it really did. It's like the kind of thing where, like, I mean, it's not even been a day, but I kind of stopped, like, thinking about it as it is, like, races through my mind, and you just process that overall what the cops have done in the course of 2 days is took a bunch of kids who don't know each other and created this story where they all collectively raped. And then you see almost at the end of the episode, they come together in the pen, in the holding cell, everybody but Corey, I think, and they're like, oh, you're Antron, aren't you? Or you're this one. And they start to realize.
And they start realizing, like, what stories that they've told about this person, that they've created about this person that they don't even know. And they say that they did all these terrible things with.
Then you see, like, the one of them breaks down and starts crying. And he's like, I snitched on you. I'm sorry. And then he's like, I did it too. And you, like, watch as they all, like, were broken. And then they start to, like, slowly realize they got played real fucking bad. And then they, like, kind of go home and the episode kind of ends. I don't know if there was anything else really in there, but man, it was just so charged. And, like, I guess you're just stuck looking at it like, no wonder. Like, we review a lot of hip-hop, a lot of classic hip-hop, and one of the things you'll notice is this consistent distrust of the police. But, like, when you have such documented and clear cut, like, yo, these are black kids, let's make it happen, honestly, just because they were black, that is, or the Hispanics, right, ethnic, I'm not sure what the right word is here, but, like,
not white,
just because we can make it work, nobody's really gonna question it too much. And you gotta consider it's 89, right? So a lot of people alive today are alive back then. Then we get to, like, episode 2, which is basically, like, the court case of the situation. And I don't know, some parts of it are kind of, like, less dramatic. Like, this guy's got this lawyer, and this one's got a civil activist lawyer, and this one, and they all got a different person representing them. And you start to see kind of, like, the impact on the family lives a little bit as they all go home. Like, Antron's dad decides he just can't deal with it. He's out and he stops coming home because if he's involved in a bad way, he is visibly showing to the cops, then maybe they're going to ruin his fucking life. So he decided he's not going to stand by his kid. And then,
which sucks.
yeah, you just kind of watch as everyone's like, I didn't do it. The lawyers are there. They start strategizing. They decide they want to do separate cases for whatever reason, because they all kind of have their own little selfish motivations to keep their kid out.
But at this point, the lawyer doesn't even, like, she already kind of believes that they're innocent. Like, she's kind of like, this is, like, you know, all the proof that, you know, is kind of, you know, kind of being shown is very clearly, like, against, you know, what they're trying to, like.
But it's not okay. But, like, even that lawyer, like, if we go to the trial lawyer, right, as she's, like, going through the court case, you see that her issue isn't that the kids are innocent. Like, it's not what her problem is. Her problem is, I'm gonna look bad because of this. I'm gonna lose. Like, how the fuck are you setting me up to lose? Like, let us just realize that these people, these judges, like the judge involved, all of these people, all of the court, if like on that side of it, none of them gave a fuck if the kids were innocent. It's not what it was about for them. The judge was right up there with the collusion too. You can see how the judge is sitting there strategizing with the lawyer and the cops and shit.
And
right?
they showed like a picture of like his daughter, like, you know, like a white girl, you know, like, you know, it's sitting in like right in front of like the judge's like little like booth or whatever. And so it goes to show that he's very like inclined to like be supportive of like white women and, you know, very, you know, cautious, I guess, obviously towards black guys or other people.
So we also find out, because like there is this like pool of lawyers that have teamed up to represent each kid of varying degrees of quality. I believe like Antron's lawyer is a divorce lawyer.
Yeah.
Yusuf gets the it almost I don't want to assume, but it felt like maybe a Nation of Islam type activist lawyer that came in. Raymond Santana had the guy who wants to be a politician in the future lawyer.
Kind of like the slick kind of Hispanic lawyer.
Kevin, I believe, gets white boy lawyer.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember who Corey's lawyer is at all. I know Corey probably had a lawyer, but I can't remember. So Corey had I don't remember much about Corey's lawyer. I don't know. Let me know if you remember. We'll probably look it up after this. Still, in the meantime, so they run through this little council, and in this little council of lawyers that are hanging out, kind of discussing the case, they realize that this case, instead of having the normal lottery system of how they get assigned to judges, was assigned to a particular judge, knowing to basically almost exclusively assign people to Rikers Island in jail and such like that. Like, so basically, they're rigging this motherfucker from the beginning. Then you see them talking as they go throughout the court proceedings, and they want to test out certain kinds of evidence. Like they have a sock, and the sock has some cum in it. But
it's very like, it's shocking, like when like they find out that there's this sock with semen in it, with semen, because like the all of like the kids and like their attorneys and stuff, this is the first that they're hearing about this, and so this is very new and very empowering evidence. If this is DNA, this is scientific DNA proving that, you know, who was at the scene.
Also, the sperm inside of the cervix of the young victim lady, it was inconclusive, and it turns out that the DNA in this sock doesn't like match anybody, right?
It matched none of the kids.
Yeah, so
and
it's
so
just
like when like that like piece of, when that no was given, like when he was asking, like, you know, and did it match any of the like the, you know, the defendants, you know, like the scientist is like no. And like I got like chills, like I started crying, like I was like, oh my god, I'm like, this is it, like this is the evidence that they needed.
So they split up the cases. Now the cop side wanted to do this because they have these tapes, audio tapes or videotapes. I'm not sure which. I know that Corey's was a videotape, but whatever.
I think they filmed all of them.
So they have these tapes of the kids confessing, but the problem is because of the way the trial was done, they had to redact a whole bunch of it. So if they split it up into multiple trials, I guess because they weren't all co-defendants, they didn't have to redact everything, which would allow all the tapes to be played in all the trials in such a way that would incriminate it. So Yusuf, Antron, and Raymond get tried together, and I think Kevin and Corey get tried together. And it's crazy, right? Because like of all of this, Yusuf and Corey are the only ones who know each other, right? And so all of a sudden now all these strangers are being tried together. All of their lawyers have like motivations. The lawyers also wanted to split up the trial because Yusuf's mom's like, fuck yo kids, my kid isn't like your kids, we're not in the same boat. And And then, Raymond Santana's lawyers didn't really care about anybody else's. He just wanted to win. And then you watch, though, as the court case comes on, that it almost seems like everybody really kind of, even on the lawyers of the kids, they start to almost like fucking just do everything they can here because it's just wrong what's happening.
Yeah.
Like you watch all
They see it. They know
everybody, like the Latino guy, he was like a fucking asshole at first, but it's almost like, you know what, this is fucked up. This is more than just about my political career.
And he joins like their fight and like what everybody's fighting for. And like even like when like they're when they walk into like all these kids like walk into like the courthouse, there's like all these like petitioners, is that the right word? Protesters that are like cheering them on and basically like agreeing that this is like that they've been framed, that this is like bullshit. And so it's just crazy that there are and there's so much support for them.
And there was definitely a certain pointed perspective against Mr. Donald Trump on this, because he takes out a full page ad in the New York Times with the specific intent of bringing back the death penalty to kill like these kids. Like, damn, that's some shit. That's
serious shit.
Like, wow, like I don't even know how to like really think about it. Now, on the one hand, fine, it was like 20 something years ago, 30 years ago, but on the other hand,
the best like dig like kind of moment for like that showed up was when there was that ad for the commercial and you see Donald Trump and then the woman says, "Oh, don't worry, his 15 minutes are almost up, like his 15 minutes of fame."
Yeah.
And then obviously coming from like a today's perspective, that's definitely like, not the case.
It's just like that's the same guy that's the president now.
Like he should have been a has-been, and now he's the president.
But so it cuts all to that. Then they go through the court case as they run through the evidence, and I think a really pivotal moment is all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Antron's dad decides that he's gonna become like the surprise witness to give his testimony about how the cops interfered and shit.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yo, Tron's like, I don't even want you here. Fuck out of here. Where were you the first half of the trial? You don't know shit. How do you know you're not going to fuck some shit up? And then he proceeds to get on the trial, and he's like, yeah, the cops coerced me and stuff, but he doesn't bring up his job thing. Like, he doesn't bring up his part. He's just kind of finesses the truth a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it ends up being spun by the cop side by going like, yo, so essentially what you're saying about your kid is he's a truthful son and we should trust everything he has to say, right? It's like, yeah, that's absolutely it. And everyone just kind of like face palms because they're like, we got the tapes. And then they play the tapes with the confessions and shit on it. And like when you watch Corey's confession tape, it's just like, and you watch it in court after and you're like reframed out of like the drama of being there, right? Because when you watch it in the first episode, it's done in a way where you're kind of feeling this intense series of emotions, but when they play it in court after,
and you're seeing like kind of more like the behind the scenes situation, like what's really going on. But when you're just watching exactly like what you're saying, like in the court, you're only watching like just him and like just the parts that they've kind of set up. And like you even see like there's like when they're showing these clips that there is like a cut that a cut frame, and so like something was edited out, and so but nobody questions it. Nobody says what was that was edited out, like if this is like something that's important to the trial, like why was this little bit taken away? Obviously something was going on that wasn't right. There was just so much proof.
It basically was a really fucking weird situation to watch because you consider it from a point, because you have to keep in mind that if this happened once, there's no way it didn't happen more than once. And then you really think about all the trials out there, and a really big part of it that struck out to me is how politically motivated everybody was to destroy these kids.
Yeah.
And if this is the one that got caught, what about, I don't know, I get stuck with those moments where you really start to make it like widespread in your mind. You understand how the prison system makes money and all sorts of other shit. How, like, I mean, if you look at the 13th Amendment, it basically lets you use prisoners as slaves and shit. So slavery is a thing in the USA. And then you look at this situation, And I'm not saying that this case was economically motivated. It was politically motivated because it got national attention from the media. And it's very important to discuss the media because rather than asking questions like why were 5 teenagers prosecuted by the police without food and water, why was nobody investigating that? Instead it was, yo, black kids fucking raped a white chick. And when you frame the narrative like that, with the ignorance that
this is very much
exists,
in like the same sort of story that we would have heard during like the 1960s. Like this makes me think of like the Emmett Till sort of situation. Like this is 100% the same sort of thing, like where a kid was basically set up and framed and just happened to be in the right place at the right time and did something, or like it's just like these terrible things that happen, just because like people need an answer and it's convenient, and oh, they're black, it doesn't really matter, nobody cares what they think and what happens to them, and they're not important, so just it's okay, we can use them as like our or the Hispanics, like we can just use them as like our to make us look good. Like this is just like about their egos. Like this is just such bullshit.
I just know that when you really consider how corrupt the whole process of this one moment can be, but more to the point, how the media can make it widespread, because the media has the power to influence people.
Yeah.
If you talk to like people in their 40s and above, they tend to really trust the news. All those people was in their 20s and shit, or a little bit younger, so all of their parents must have really trusted the news. And when you consider how there was no internet to disseminate the information instantly for you to jump on and learn at this point, you basically gonna have the newscasters and the press and whatever's available, and you kind of get this glimpse of two sides of the press, the mainstream painting it one way, and you saw the opposition press, like the underground black newspapers and shit, kind of trying to imply or that this was a fucking bullshit job done by the cops, which it was. But where is the role of the media in looking for the truth in a moment like this? And when we consider the today and the now, and all the way the media covers these types of events, you're still kind of left with this point of there's a lot of racism in the news coverage of the world. Maybe nobody wants to talk about it. A lot of people want to talk about what the fuck am I talking about, but like it's just an ever-present problem. Somehow the role of the media is the judge and the jury, rather, because those opinion pieces sway public opinion, and then the politicians fundamentally need the public opinion to get voted in and shit. So I mean, even in the police hierarchy and all blah blah blah. So
like I just don't understand how like there wasn't anybody, like some student or something that wasn't interested in this story and like really following it and understanding what was happening. Like, and I'm sure that there was, but like,
but at the same time,
I don't know.
How is what information? Because we got to see it from the perspective of what really happened and how the coercion came to be and stuff. When you consider how it was presented to everyone else, nobody would have thought to ask the questions because everybody jumped on the lies and was just willing to accept it. Because if you consider how it's framed, right, it's a bunch of kids in good if I'm not mistaken, there's a part where it's almost like these kids come from good homes in the hood, so fuck them. Look, the hood, it just breeds animals no matter who you are. Even the well-off black people in the hood breed animals that rape chicks in the city. Like, it just fit into this narrative that, if I'm not mistaken, was super prevalent in the crack era times of the 80s and 90s and shit.
Yeah. Well, because it was just like ongoing racism, but just under a different name.
I mean, it's just racism. But, like, I look at it like...
But it was less like segregation and more like, it just was ignored more. I don't know. Like, it was
it's just how the public is so willing to accept it and not really think about it because of how it's framed. Because I think, like, there's a lot of guilt and accountability involved in a moment like that. Maybe I'm not going to include myself on this one because I was 2 when it all went down. But, like, when you really think about it, how many times in my life have I just seen the news story of buddy and this and that and never even wondered this type of shit, right?
Yeah.
So I think for myself, even watching this, it's like, wow, this could get so eloquently put together. Maybe even with my skepticism, I'm still very trusting of shit that maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know if that's the whole point of it all, but a lot of people are going to get arrested in the next couple of years. How many times are they going to be innocent? And the way our justice system works and set up and everything, how many times are the arrests going to be politically motivated when you know that there's parts of the states where like the public defender gets to look at the case for about 10 minutes before representing a person? 10 minutes. And these, anyway, so understanding the complicated nature of this problem that's fueled by a lot of private prison system type shit, like, I don't know if New York has a private system like that, but it exists in the States. And like I said, if it happened here, got to have happened multiple times, and we just don't know about it yet. Anyway, and then they get to the end of the second episode, and it's the verdicts and shit. And, well, surprise, surprise, everybody's guilties of shits. Different crimes.
My heart broke. My heart broke so hard.
I started crying at this point. I'm not going to lie, because you knew it was coming.
I did not know. I mean, I assumed something was coming, obviously, but like I didn't know what.
They're not going to make a TV show out of the kids not going to jail.
But I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, and I was just praying it wasn't.
And then, but they all found guilty of different charges, whether it was assault or whatever, except for Corey, who gets like really
16.
first degree shit. Like, oh, he got first degree assault of a woman and whatever. All the small charges were dropped, and they just hit him with everything. All the other four end up going to like these juvier type places.
Yeah.
And he gets sent to Rikers Island, which is hardcore prison, in case you didn't know about it. I mean, everybody knows Rikers Island, I assume. Still.
But, like, at this point, like, I was like crying the hardest I have in like years. Like this was fucking brutal to watch.
And then, yeah, we get to the third episode, which of all the episodes in terms of intensity and emotions, it's a little bit calmer. Yes. I felt this is basically everybody who's not Corey's story in relation to being in prison.
Then and now, sort of.
Yeah, so we get all of them kind of in the moment where they're like young, and you see them in prison, and it's all through visits with their family as they describe moments, and you see like the family on the outside. Like you see how for Raymond, I believe, he and his dad talk on the phone, and so it's told through him and his dad speaking on the phone as he gets older and goes through different stuff, and they just keep talking about like the dinner and what you had. But meanwhile, you watch how his dad is married the next chick, and they had
like
another
life goes
kid,
on, you know.
And then you watch how, like, Antron's dad wasn't around or whatever. And then, like, the mom and him are just kind of, he's trying to get him through it. Mm-hmm. And, Yusuf, I believe, has joined the Muslims and gotten really into that. And his mother is just very supportive of him and pushing like that. But then you're sitting there going, yo, where's Corey? And Kevin's pushed to like the end of the episode too.
Yeah.
So Kevin is also there, and everybody goes through it. Kevin was kind of sad that Yusuf went to the Muslims and he had to find his own way in life, and But
it was just sad. Like they just felt there was so much hate that they were feeling towards them, and just like they didn't do anything, like they were just hanging out, and like all of this is happening, and it's just clear like how this continued to happen throughout their lives, and how this incident and how this blame, like nothing can take that away, because they're always going to be blamed like for like this kind of thing, and have had to go through like these terrible situations because it impacted their entire lives. And
that really gets exemplified because I mean, they have a hard time in prison, as you can imagine, but it doesn't feel like any of those four had the hardest time. It kind of feels like,
But they lost like their education. They
I,
lost their girls. They lost
right.
their, their relationship, their
I meant,
families. They
and
didn't have
I'm not
anything
I'm
when they
not
get out
trying
of
to like
jail.
belittling that part. I
No,
meant
no, no.
how
I'm
the
just
show
saying.
was displaying it. Like, for the sake of drama, there wasn't a whole lot that seemed to happen. It just kind of showed this progression of each of the four families,
Well,
and then they get out of jail, and that's
and
where
hold
it
on.
starts to be more dramatic. I
And then
find
the Hispanic one, what's his name?
Raymond.
Raymond. He realizes that it's really impossible to find a job with a
Yeah,
criminal
because that's
record.
where,
And so he's trying to get by, and he cannot stay at home because basically like his stepmom is like a fucking bitch.
right, because
And
they yeah, so they get out, and when Raymond goes home, the house is now full.
yeah,
Well,
and so
it's
there's
not
nowhere
that
for him
she's
to. No, she is a bitch. She's like calling him a rapist. She doesn't like him. She doesn't know him.
But like, I mean, I understand how that looks, but I don't necessarily feel like she's also like a bitch 100% too, right?
Well, no,
Because
she
all
is
of a
because
sudden,
she's ratting him out, and like
well, she
she's just
rats him
stirring the
out for
pot.
drugs later on, but at the same time, it's like she marries this guy whose kid's a rapist, whatever, and this is how it's spun out. And then all of a sudden, he comes out, and now there's an extra mouth to feed, and you see in between their relationship his almost willingness to take
No,
on.
but she's extreme.
My point is something that gets brought up in this episode is how expensive these phone calls are.
Yes.
$23 a
For
call
10 minutes.
or whatever, right? And then he's just taking call after call almost like every day, and he's not worried about how to pay for it. So I'm not trying to say
of
her
course.
behavior is appropriate. What I'm trying to say is that this is like the
She
taste.
has to be a little bit more sympathetic to the situation. I get that she's probably pissed.
But
and
he
whatever.
also, if you don't remember, the dad never told her he was coming home. He just showed up one day and just dumped onto it. And it was more like the dad's fault. And if you were the mom in that moment, or that wife lady, and you already had a full house and blah, 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 and now there's kids here, do you really want him around your kids with his registered sex offender shit? You know, I'm not trying to say her behavior was appropriate. I'm just saying that
but
this is how
like,
complicated this is.
Yes.
And I think that's what it's trying to showcase. Because, yeah.
I agree.
I was trying to, like, so after the first, I mean, the episode's done in a way where it does, like, 2 kids and then the next couple of kids. But their stories are split from I'm a kid, then I'm an adult. And then it rolls as they all get out of prison because they were all given, I guess, lesser sentences and whatever. And then, like, so, yeah.
But it just goes to show, like, because of all of that, like, he decides to turn to drug dealing, which is probably not that uncommon because you're realizing you can't get a job anywhere.
But it's like, it's so intense. Like, they walk you through the form, and it's like, you need to mark off that you've been here. And he's like, are you a felon? Yes, you are. And then he, like, points to, like, this guy who's on the grill, and he's like, that dude's a felon. So if you work on the same shift as him,
and if you don't check this box, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, and if, let's say you don't, and you end up working on the shift with this guy,
it's a breach of
you're
parole.
going to jail. I didn't know that. Like, I mean, I suppose on some level I knew that felons can't congregate, but it didn't make me realize that if the boss is nice enough to hire the felon, the one felon at this place, that means that if he wants to hire a second felon, these shifts can't even overlap to a point where they can't even be in the same room together. Like, you don't really think about that.
Yeah.
In general. Then there's the part where he's a registered sex offender. And if you check this box and you serve shit to kids, you're in trouble because you're not allowed to be in front of any kids that aren't your stuff. And then you're watching, like, him, like, struggle through this process of trying to get a job. But Raymond, interestingly enough, had a girlfriend, pen pal, some girl who thought he was innocent. And then they move in, and then it puts pressure on him to, like, you know, get his life together and find a job and get some money. He can't find the money.
And she gets excited because she finds, like, a place, and, like, you know, they're gonna make, like, a, you know, pay, like, first and last month's rent, and, like, and they can have it, and it's, like, this great spot, and it's not too expensive, but he's trying to, like, muster up the money and do it fast.
And so you start selling drugs. And there's an earlier scene where you see him talking to, like, a guy who, you know, seems to be a little bit of a youth leader and knows he's going through a hard time. They were part of, like, the people protesting when they were in their court case.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, just don't go back. Everything about this is to make you go back. And then, you know, you see him try for so long and for so hard. He starts selling that crack. Then the stepmom snitches him up because he brings the crack into the house, and that was a big issue. He tries to fuck his girl in the house. That was a big issue.
Meanwhile, he's trying to move out, and, like, she's basically, like, ruining everything.
And then he gets sent back to jail, and that's kind of his end. Antron, he goes back and he finds that his dad's moved back home, and his dad's fucking sick, and
He's
the mom
dying.
took him
He's
back.
like kidney failure.
And you kind of look through that, and Antron, was Antron the one who meets the girl? Or is that... No, it wasn't Kevin.
No. I think it was Antron.
Yeah, Antron meets this girl, and you can see everything about his life is super low key. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He's not 100% willing to admit what happened. He doesn't tell the girl. Then when he neglects her for a while, she makes some petty ass comment, letting him know she knows who he is and what it was about. And then that story kind of fades as it kind of like they move off. Apparently, he ends up leaving the city, and they go off, and he tries to change his name and shit. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but just watching like from that angle, now you can't go anywhere, and everywhere you go people want to recognize you, and you have to like hide because of this stain, this public stain that goes on your record, and people who have seen your face into things. And then if you look at today and now, John Oliver did a whole episode on the industry of motherfuckers ensuring that if you have a record, that if you get Googled, your record shows up. And there's an entire like business around paying thousands of dollars to like something like 20, 30 different sites that all parallel do the same thing to make sure that motherfuckers know that you did some shit. But on top of that, there's the registered sex offender list thingy where you can Google motherfuckers and always find out. So like there is like a stain on these dudes to the point where they have to hide. They can't get jobs.
And a lot of discrimination comes on top of the discrimination that they're already getting being minorities.
I mean, I feel like I don't remember much that was super significant from the story related to Yusuf coming out. He just kind of seems to be out, and then I don't really remember. He seems quiet, and he's very concerned about Corey and wants everybody to understand Corey's sacrifice. And nobody gets a hold of Corey.
Nobody knows where he is.
Yusuf's mom doesn't want to help Corey's mom get to him, arrange a visit or anything.
Yeah.
And, it's just kind of a mystery what's going on there. And then I, for the life of me, do not remember what happened with Kevin's little plot line in this episode. He gets out of jail, and his sister or somebody has the life of him, or something about his sister. I don't remember. I really don't.
Well, because she was like the one that was like signing. She vouched for his story, his confession, and he was begging out of like desperation. He just wanted to go home. He wanted to stop the interrogation from the first episode, and so she signed the interrogation, agreeing that this was fine because I think it was because he was a minor, because he was under 14 or 14 and under or whatever. So I think that she had a lot of guilt because of that she felt somehow like she had like implicated him. I think that's what it was.
And yeah, so I guess the impact of how that can happen. Still, compared to the other ones, it didn't get as much airtime, and it was tucked in at the end of the episode. Yeah. So I apologize. Plus, I was sitting there the whole time going, where's Corey's story at, yo? I'm not gonna lie, like, I had a soft spot for Corey right off the jump. You saw that scene of Corey getting arrested when he was young, and he's walking by and seeing everyone else in the cop cars and realizing how fucked up his situation is now.
Right away, I liked Yusuf most because I thought he looked so cool.
But Corey just hit me in this soft spot, so I was like, where the fuck is Corey's story at?
And Kevin just was so innocent. He was just so innocent.
Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, too, is I believe it's Antron's or Yusuf's mom, maybe it was Yusuf's mom, couldn't get jobs because anytime she would go through like the interview process, there would be a bunch of phone calls coming in with like hate, saying, how could you be considering this person? Do you not know?
No, it was where she was currently working, I think. Oh. And then she got fired because of that, like because of who she was and what she had done. And what her son had done. So it was just like the implications of like this whole story, how it just affects more. It's just like a ripple effect. It affects so many people in different ways.
What is most striking about that to me is that's what we see on Twitter all the time now. And I feel like we have this constant love in this society of blaming millennials for things like using Twitter to get people fired or being inflamed or being impassioned. Like, this is some new shit. And what I just saw in that moment there was the equivalent of a bunch of people my parents' age running around and getting this lady fired because of blah 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 reason what her son did. But that's exactly what happens today. So it's just another fun behavior that was taught to millennials by the people who currently blame millennials for engaging in that behavior. Fun fact. But like, there's so many little things like that that get tucked into this show. Oh, we're doing a pretty good job for having just watched it once. That's fucking engaging shit, man. That is, like, you get glued to it. And I'm not going to lie, there were moments in episode 3 where tears were coming a bit, because as much as, like, it might not be so dramatic,
but it's
in
just
a sense,
heartbreaking to know that they had to go through this shitty shit, like, during such, like, the prime time of their lives, for something that they didn't do, and how it just so negatively impacted everything around them, and and especially them, and how they're just like free, and how they're still sort of trapped in that mentality of the age that they were when this incident happened. Like, they haven't been able to like evolve and grow and move past it. Like, they're still they're still quite children in like their minds. I think they just,
well, I feel like in the adult part, like, you watch everybody but Corey gradually move past it and get through it. Like, when Antron's dad dies, they hug and have a moment, and stuff like that, where they all seem to have their own ways of dealing with it.
Yeah.
But then we get to the last episode where we get Corey's story. And fuck, just, it's an hour and 20. I think it's like the longest one, and it makes totally sense, because we find out Corey's mom doesn't have a lot of money, and so she's not really able to come visit him a lot or make it out there. We find out really later on
that he really needs her. He has nobody.
And like, we find out that she was choosing drugs to cope for a very long time.
And his older brother, who was like, and this is 1989, who was gay and, a transgender type person. Sometimes he like dressed in like, as a woman. And so it was just sort of like this hatred towards being black and being gay or / transgendered. And it's just like
you see like this
Kevin,
whole...
like
well, like, because so through Kevin's jail
not Kevin,
Corey.
Corey just understood his brother and loved his brother no matter what, but the mom definitely had issues with this.
And we learned that because of like these flashbacks that take place. So like, Corey's story is like 20 times as tragic as like everyone else's. So like, he gets sent to big boy growing up hardcore fucking gangbanger type full of prison.
Like we said before, he's not the smartest guy. He has a lot of problems.
He really doesn't understand. Like,
grasping.
When they condemned him, he apparently screamed out, like, "This is wrong. You guys, like, played me. You're going to get what's coming to you." Spoiler alert, they sort of got what's coming to them. Somebody got fired this week. The blonde lady, I believe.
The author, right?
Yeah, she got dropped from her publisher. So, like, the blonde criminal lady.
And funnily enough, I was surprised that woman was featured in this, considering that she was one of those ones who's, I guess she just got off of a conviction, because she was the one where she paid her kids to go to university. Yeah,
That's
was
amazing.
her. That was Felicity Huffman.
No, that was was it?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Wait, who was Felicity Huffman?
The author, the blonde one that was pushing for like sending the kids to jail.
Right. And she was who in regards to this?
The blonde business one who was the author. When at the end, when the girl's confronting her with her books, she's her.
Okay. And then so yeah, we run through the beginning part where it's like Corey's in like general population, and like right away the white dudes just corner him and beat the fuck out of him, and like he realizes that, like, he doesn't even understand what's going on, to a point where in the very beginning, like, a corrupt correctional officer is basically like, "Let me know what you can do for me," and he doesn't even get it. He has no idea how this game is played or what the fuck's happening. He just gets put into his cell and everything's loud. He gets the shit kicked out of him, and he finds out that if he goes to the infirmary, he'll be viewed as a snitch. So the next time that something like this happens, asks to go to solitary. So inevitably. It happens. It takes a while, but it happens
Yep.
because he starts paying the guard to keep him safe. And he's like, look, even if I keep you safe or whatever. So he starts begging his mother for money because he needs money to pay the guard.
And it's like the screams are so desperate. Like he's just like begging her.
I'm like, then he's ends up in solitary where he's just left to like fantasize, and he meets like this nice guard guy, and
He kind of goes a little bit crazy.
he's like helping him because they lose the heat for a while, and he kind of gets him a chia pet, and you can tell that this guard takes pity on him. He helps him get a job, and we see him have a little fight with a dude in like the thing while some music's playing, and
he wants to get transferred. He wants to get transferred closer so that his mom can visit him more, because the jail that he's at is like 350 miles away or something.
It was less than that. That's the one he ends up getting sent to.
Well, then he gets sent to the one that's 20 kilometers more than that.
No, it was a lot more. It was more like he was one that was like, I don't know,
or 20 minutes more.
Yeah, but it was like he was already like he was a lot closer than where he got sent.
About 400 kilometers.
Yeah, anyway.
Or miles, whatever.
So he's at one prison, and then he gets told, yeah, you're gambling. You might end up close, or you might end up fucking farther away than even now. And so...
And then he does.
He's like, well, my bad luck's like already hit its max. It can't happen. I'm going to take that chance. And then he goes to the next prison, and your just heart breaks even more for him because you see he is over there.
And he's away from like the guard who kind of had his back and like that kind of stuff.
When he gets to that prison, he finds out that like they basically, one of the guards pays to have the shit kicked out of him. They try to kill him basically.
Yeah.
He survives that, and they put basically just stay in solitary. We don't want you.
They stab him.
Yeah, and like, we don't want you. Stay in solitary. We don't want no celebrity prisoners here. We don't want your kind. We don't want that attention. Stay here. And whatever. And then throughout the episode, you see him keep going before the parole board, where apparently to get parole, you have to admit guilt to your like crimes and acknowledge it. So if he did that, well, then it's like confessing at that point. You're like set in stone that you guilty. And he refused. He's like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to admit to what I did not do, which is fair. I get it.
Yep.
And just time and time again.
Like he didn't do it at any point. It's like, you know, like it was already talked about. Like, why would they change their story now? Like, it's, you know, through everything that they stuck to the truth. And I think that was the most important thing that they could have done. But it just comes at such a shitty cost.
And basically, he ends up back in solitary, and he starts going through all of these fantasies of his past, and we learn about his sister and the moment when his brother,
sister.
Yeah, because he was dressing like a lady.
He changes his name to Marcy. So.
And we learn about how the brother dies, he like has like almost nobody left to live for, and
his brother gets murdered. He was just having like, you see him like having like this kind of like happy, you know, like loving kind of moment with his brother, like in his mind, like he's remembering this moment that he had with him, and you know how much he loves his brother. And then like the next scene, you see him being taken to the what is it called, like the minister or whatever, of like the jail, and he tells him that his brother's been murdered, and you know, like that, you know, and that he's dead, you know, and it's just like heartbreaking. It's just like he just lost like his, you know, the person that he loves the most, you know, and he loves his mom, but he really loves his brother, and he really looked up to him, and like that was kind of like his something to live for, something to keep fighting for, just so that he could see his brother again. And so like that was taken away. So I think at this point he's just like, he's had it.
And then he's kind of just there for a while, and then one day out of the blue, the same guy that he fought with, this Reyes guy, he looks at him and he's like, you've had hope and faith and conviction for so fucking long, like you must be religious or something. It's fucking weird almost. And then they proceed to...
Well, I think that at this point, like, I think that it was, you know, this was several years, like, later after, like, any, like, you know, beef that they had. And I think, obviously, that the Reyes guy had found sort of like peace, or maybe it sounded a little bit like AA, like he had gone through like something and he was following his steps, and because he said, I really appreciate your forgiveness. And I think that that's something that it's very important for people
Even
in
though
AA
like
to have.
Corey had like no fucking idea what the guy was talking about because he doesn't tell Corey. He then just proceeds to go and confesses, and then they reopen the case. I think it's in 2001 or something like that.
Well, because he
And
shows
then
them the Twin Towers
he has
being
the matched
crashed.
DNA being matched and everything, and so they figure out who it is. And then all of a sudden, they realize like Corey's like innocent and everybody's innocent. But like, man, it's so hard to stress like watching Corey. Like when Corey went to jail, hard jail, he was 16, and just 14 years he spent in prison, basically
And
spending the bulk of
a
that
hard
time
by himself.
in solitary because it wasn't safe for him because he's a sex offender and he's black. And it's just like, man, wow, like on his face was plastered everywhere, so like everybody know who the fuck he was. And I don't know if
Like
I
there
can,
was like one guy who was like friendly to him, like the guy with dreads.
but like at the end of the day,
Like he was like he knew like he was innocent, or like knew his
or like
story.
understood it. But the fact that like none of the white people in prison believed him, kind of thing. It was just very heavy to watch his journey through prison. I mean, it justified a full episode to itself for the amount that guy had to go through, all because he decided to ride along with his friend and be like, yo, I'm gonna be your homeboy.
Yep.
And then they get let out, and like whatever, they get exonerated of all crimes. You see him walking around with his fresh new clothes, Corey, at the end.
But like also you see him in jail too, when he's like, before he gets exonerated, like he's fantasizing about like if he had just made the decision to stay with his girlfriend, the girl who he wanted, and like just decided, not to go with his buddies and get riled up, and how easy the decision would have been just to be like, no, I'm gonna stay with my girl. Like how, like
And
it
then,
would have
like,
just been that would have changed the
and then
path
he
of
just
his life.
pictures this whole date.
Like with her
Opens up the cell door to like Coney Island.
at Coney Island, and you see
Windsor
before he
Prize.
has like he had a postcard in his cell of Coney Island, and that kind of tied back to that. And like he had never even kissed a girl before, and he asked to kiss her, and you're just like, oh, like
But
just like
then-
so like just like the innocence of it all.
And then like he's just there, and I don't know, man. Watching his progression and just seeing how, they beat the shit out of him to force him to confess, right? They slapped him in the face and shit, and he didn't even know what he was doing, and then had to go through solitary like that. Like solitary confinement in and of itself is some inhumane bullshit. I mean, I get it, but like, the prison system's really fucked up, man. Like, it's just a really fucked up thing, and it's so ineffective. Why? Because you get out, and as you learn, like,
Life's even worse almost when
you
you
have
get
like no
out.
opportunities,
Like, you're just trapped. Like,
or you
can't
get
do
some
much.
lucky. But then, like, if you're somebody like Corey, whose mom chose drugs over you, and you can't even get anything, any support, anything. It's just like, shit. That's some fucked up shit. And then they get out, and then they win $43 million or some shit in 2014.
No, and then they're I looked it up because they're still they're trying to get more actually.
But they still got that in
I
2014,
think it's 41.
and that was the biggest payout in New York City. But you gotta consider it, like, that's 2014. They got let out of jail in the early 2000s. What about all that time in between?
Yeah.
Certainly now
Like,
they're
and like
not
I'm
convicts
sure,
and whatnot, but
like I'm sure it's great, and it is absolutely a grand gesture, or like a gesture. I wouldn't necessarily, okay, maybe not grand, but yes, it's good, but there's no buying back your entire life. Like this changed their lives, and I mean, I suppose now, like, this attention drawn to them, I'm sure it's going to mostly be positive, and I'm sure that they'll benefit from a lot of like the positivity, and like the attention to this story again, and I think that things will hopefully change, and like there will be some like attention brought to like the criminal justice system and how it's not working, especially for minorities.
There's just that moment where they're out and they're being honored by Harlem, and you just see the five of them with their hands up like that and shit. And I don't know, like, how do you like make it up to somebody when you robbed them of their life and fucked them up? But all of those kids probably have, all those men, because like you see at the last scene, like they're giving you the summaries, like one of them has 10 kids. If you can get to 10 kids, that's some serious. You putting in work if you catch
You
my
are not
drift.
wasting any time.
And like that, well, like I think it was Youssef is a political activist consistently
makes sense.
fighting like the prison systems and whatnot.
Yeah. A bunch of them moved down to Georgia, so
Corey stayed in
interesting.
New York. He was the only one to stay in New York, and he opened up like a foundation to like
support.
offer legal and criminal advice to people like him. Which 2014 he got a lot of money, and what did he do with it? Fuck off. He did the.
Yeah.
That's a noble ass thing to do.
Yeah.
And then because of this, it was so Linda Farstein is the blonde chick, the prosecutor lady. She had a book deal writing crime novels, and because of this show, she lost her job. So
like I think the publisher dropped her, right?
Yeah. So I don't know about Felicity Huffman or anything you were bringing up, but this lady.
Well, no, she's. But anyways, whatever.
I don't know where Felicity, if they're in the same scandal, maybe. I don't know. But Linda
No,
Farstein.
you know who she is. She's the one she paid her to get
I
her.
know
to
who Felicity
into this-
Hoffman is. I don't know how she connects at all to this story in
I'm
any
just
way, shape, or form. I know that the Linda Farstein lady, she lost her job because of this particular show.
Mm-hmm.
That I understand.
Yeah.
Felicity Hoffman, I missed something. I'm confused. Still, that's fine. This show is extremely powerful. I don't really know what else we can comment on. I mean,
like it was. I mean, this is just. I had never heard of this story, and so I mean, it was just like to kind of go in blind and hear all about like the truth that happened, and like just like there's like the bullshit that was just created just to clear like some stupid people's names, and make other people look good at the cost of like children. Like it just seemed like I don't know. It just seems like something that wouldn't happen in my lifetime, and yet it did, and definitely probably continues to. So I think that we definitely need to do something different because this isn't working.
I mean, it's just everything about that story is sad. How everybody failed these kids. How nobody was held accountable, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if the biggest punishment for that situation is lady fucking lost a book deal, like all these years later, and this Netflix show isn't even the first time somebody has created media on this. So how did these people who destroyed these kids' lives still get book deals and crap? Like, I don't know, man. Like on the one hand, maybe they changed their lives. On the other hand, it's still there's just certain things maybe where you've crossed the line where maybe you shouldn't be allowed to become rich and successful in the society's eyes or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but seeing how that lady prosecuted these kids, and it was all about political success in her mind.
She was just trying to like get them like to look into like negative light. Like just one thing wrong had to like come up, and like she would run with it.
And the fact that in her life she got to go become a published author and all this other great shit. All these kids, like, well, I mean, they all ended up, I guess, all right at the end of the day. But it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel proper. Everything these kids went through, this just...
Like, I just wanted to give them, like, the biggest hugs ever. And, I don't know, like, you just feel so, like, sad that this happened to them. And, you know, like, there's nothing that can be done to, like, you know, fix it or anything. But, you know, I think that it definitely draws attention to the situation that things can happen like this and do happen like this.
I just think we need to never allow a moment where the cops or anyone is just able to so effectively twist the situation like that for political gain. I mean, there's a problem in the system where winning a high profile case like this, where locking up 5 black teenagers for a rape victim, like, why don't we like boil it down? The need for us as a people to crave that conclusion drives prosecutors to get that. It's like how do you turn them into rock stars? Like OJ's lawyer, Mike Cochran, I think, or maybe that's not the right one. So that was a terrible example, but I sort of remembered. It's just how did this? Just because it got national attention and the media hyped it up, like it wasn't about the truth. Maybe there should be some kind of rules about how the media reports on things. I don't know, but I feel like you're left with like there's too much of this that can still happen today. All of the problems that created that, including Donald Trump, are still around today. And if anything, the type of people who created this circumstance in the first place, I mean, you got to understand, Donald Trump advocating in that ad riled people up. It changed how far this prosecuting team was willing to go
so in a way,
win.
This story, this Netflix special does have a little bit of political implications too.
Like, oh man, there was like 4 or 5 points where they took shots at Donald Trump, and they did it smart. All they did was play interviews of him talking that were just previously recorded
about this, like and, things that were going on.
It was like probably the only thing that wasn't acted in the show were like these interviews, and then that scene at the end where you see the real versions of all 5 of the dudes. I was bawling. Like, yeah. I had to take a shower after because my face was all like fucking goopy with boogers and shit. So Jonathan Barnes on the reel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've had to hold it in a couple of times on this episode here because, you just think about it and
it was heartbreaking. I'm like, my heart broke for those kids, and just for the fact that they.
Or imagine if they had gotten the death penalty for the kids in the states where you can get the death penalty. How many times does this happen?
Yeah.
A motherfucker's dead now, and oopsie, we killed the guy. Whoops. And like that's the reaction of people. Well, if you weren't born poor, then it wouldn't have happened to you, is essentially the response that you'll get. Or don't be born black, I guess, if you want to avoid dying in that regard. I mean, I don't know. You're left with these frustrating emotions because I know that I don't want to talk about this at work because the arguments that might come up based on the stance I take on these issues would maybe not be popular among certain of my colleagues. Like, most people's cool and get it. But certain people, and they often always seem to be in higher power positions, might be a little more inclined to, but when I think about the event, and then twist the facts in a way where, like, everything was, I mean, of course, maybe this is a bad example. I think it's empirically impossible to not see how the crime situation was on the fault of the police. They fucked up. But you know that this won't necessarily change the minds of people, that there could be maybe a systematic issue in how politically driven prosecutors who all want to make a name for themselves are willing to do this type of shit. And maybe
this doesn't just happen to these kids. I'm sure this is, exactly like what a lot of these rappers are rapping about. Like, it's a very similar situation where where they might just get arrested, or somebody might get arrested just because so and so wants to like make a big name for themselves, but shit doesn't always,
or it's just all over.
I don't know, it's just not fair.
I don't know. I just think that, look, anybody that's in the kind of position such as for a judicial system shouldn't necessarily be able to become a rock star off of some shit like that. Mm-hmm. These are people's lives that are getting toyed with. And maybe for a long, long time, we all believed a certain thing about a certain thing. I don't know that I can go back and retroactively judge how people reacted to the news and be fair about it. I can't. I can only be, that's some fucked up shit. How can we learn from that so that we don't act stupid when you know that in just other parts of the world, fake news is causing genocidal bullshit to go on through WhatsApp and whatnot. So there are lessons in this show, in a real life historical close to home example, that can show some threats that we are facing as a people in regards to information flow and susceptibility and willingness to jump on preconceived conclusions just because it fits what we believe, regardless to approaching it with a fact-driven approach. So in an era where everybody's feelings formulate their opinion because the facts don't really matter, regardless to what side, and all sides of the fence, including myself, are guilty of this. All we can really do is hopefully watch some shit like this and learn the mistakes of ignoring the facts of a moment to fit your fucking narrative. Everybody on earth should watch some shit like this.
But the issue is just that it's the people in charge.
But it's not just the people in charge. It's us as much as them.
Yes.
Like, it's like saying that the people didn't have a role in Britney Spears going nuts.
No,
if the people didn't care, the tabloids wouldn't have tabloided it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Same
thing to Princess Diana. If y'all didn't have worshipped her, this paparazzi thing wouldn't have happened. In the same way, and I am making this comparison, if people didn't demand this instant justice every time some shit happens before people have the time to do the due process, maybe prosecutors wouldn't feel so politically inclined. And I'm not blaming people who are the victims of a situation.
Like,
I'm
even
mostly
just like the news reporters, like, you know, like,
all of this cycle going on of people like us getting riled up and yeah, let's get that motherfucker. The second we see some shit that happens, like a woman gets raped, and maybe if we just all thought it through a little bit more instead of jumping to conclusions. Look, if it had turned out the kids was involved after the investigation, that's a super different story, and it wouldn't have been made a movie. It would have just been 5 rapists got convicted. But instead, it was just a theory for political gain.
Yeah.
That political gain, and like, comes from...
It was just so blatantly, like, obvious that that they were innocent. Like, their stories didn't match. Everybody was making up different things, different scenarios. They were saying that they were in different places, like, with different people. Different people were the penetrators. Some of them were not. Like, it was just, like, the whole thing was just fabricated. Nothing made sense. And, like, it was just... Like, at that point, somebody must have been like, okay, like, nobody seems to be saying anything. Like, why are we, like, still pressuring? Like, I don't know. It just...
Well, that's it. Why? Because the people are demanding an answer, and we have to give it to them. And then egos kick in. We said it was these people. We can't be wrong.
It's very embarrassing. It's very, like, shameful.
It's career ending.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter what's true in this world. And anyway, I don't know. I guess I can go in circles at this point. Yeah. I feel like we've hit that end point of this discussion.
Yeah.
Look,
it's worth watching, but it's going to change your soul.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, unlike a lot of based on a true story things, this is like really heavy.
Yeah.
Because it is a true story. This is the story.
And it's like executively produced by Oprah, so you know it's like it's going to be a tearjerker.
But you're just left with the sense that if this could happen to these 4 or 5 kids, they didn't even know each other ahead of time, etc., etc. This is why people don't trust the police. This is why people don't trust the judicial system, because this isn't an isolated instance. This probably happens to this day. I don't know the frequency.
And it just goes like ignored, just like their stories almost did.
But considering how little we go to the water cooler and discuss the judicial system, whereas, I do know that most people were unhappy with the last episode of Game of Thrones. I don't know. Please don't spoil. I want to read them when he finishes writing them. But, nobody wants to talk about this type of shit. And that's, I think, the weird part. So good on whoever made this happen, because at least for a week, people will talk about this at work, and maybe a couple people feel inspired. Maybe we need to get more of these stories out there. Maybe we need to really document and showcase this type of shit more often, because I didn't feel comfortable the entirety of the 4.5 hours. You got this pit in your stomach.
I got shaky at one point.
It just doesn't go away.
My heart was racing. My bones were aching.
And then even as they're winning at the end, as we can call it, winning, it doesn't go away. And then it just ends, and you're just left with this defeated feeling. And then you go, imagine the moms of these kids. Imagine that sister lady who had to live with signing that paper when she was just too young to know better herself, Yeah. All of these people. And then how many other people in the world, in the US of A, with the highest prison percentage and the population percentage, all that shit. You all know the stats. It's just a mind fuck, because what this show does really well, but I can admit that maybe hip-hop doesn't do the best job at, is the show breaks your fucking heart, as Bonnie said.
Yeah.
Whereas hip-hop will aggressively point it out in a lot of ways. You don't get enough empathetic, heartbreaking styled stuff where it's almost empirically not fair.
Yeah.
And wrong and cruel and inhumane. And all
I
those
think
words.
that this if a lot of people watch this, especially if a lot of minorities who may be suffering from this sort of discrimination, I think that if enough of them watch it, I think that there will be sort of a regeneration of this issue happening, and kind of people fighting to stop it, more people than just Kim Kardashian. But
which is crazy that Kim Kardashian's fighting this shit.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah, I mean it's all good. I mean, if she's got the power to do it, and people might make fun of her, and she may not be the smartest
she keeps
person,
at it.
but she's pursuing it, and she's doing a good thing, and people can hate on her, but I mean, I think it's good. But anyways, that's my point. But anyways, I think that I want to go and look up Corey Wise's foundation and maybe donate to it. I think that's what it is. I think people will be inspired to do something from this. Hopefully, I think that's kind of the point, right?
I mean, we got inspired to make this video. I don't know what it does to make this video, but if we can use this platform to talk about the real shit that goes on in the world, and by the real shit, I just mean the stuff that maybe people don't feel comfortable talking about. I can't ignore this kind of thing no more. So if this is what we can do, then what can you do, person watching this? You might be smarter, cooler, more attractive and interesting than I. You might have much more wealth and success than I. Maybe you can do something more interesting than I that makes a bigger difference than I. While I still try to find my own way to make an even bigger one. And maybe if we all watch shit like this to get inspired and break our hearts again so we feel like we're 20, because we all stop feeling in our 30s. Maybe we can regain that empathetic connection and good shit happens. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being idealistic. All right. Thank you all for watching. We can just keep going, but we appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mr. Jonathan Barnes, for recommending this. You definitely made me shed more tears than I thought I would this weekend.
He's not a better man than you.
No, not at all. I wanted to. I was so proud when I got through the first episode. I did break the second. Guilty. Oh no!
Oh, that was the worst. That was the absolute
It was just
worst.
power.
I was like,
you just keep watching, and you chain watch this motherfucker. Trust me, you chain watch this. It'll hit you.
Yeah.
Special thanks. Look, sorry. Feel free to leave a comment and let us know about your experiences. I'll answer you. We can have a conversation about it. Let me know what you think. If you have any other stories, if you want to challenge my point about hip hop and tell us about all the sad hip hop songs on this subject, I'll also be really curious to hear those. Special thanks to the patrons Ismail Gadamsi, Chris Prado, Jonathan Barnes, Linda Williams, and DJ Black Hurricane. They support what we do. They get to give us some album requests, and for $1 a month or more, you can help us grow and just do this more often. Otherwise, you can hit that subscribe button or the like button if you liked it, or you can leave a comment. We can chit chat and all that good stuff, and let us know what impactful shows you think are worth talking about. Maybe not what's most entertaining and fluffy, but what is worth talking about because you think that the message of the show is just that powerful. You know what, Jonathan Barnes, if you were to get a grade for your recommendation, it's a 5 on 5. I don't know, but that kind of shit would be really interesting to us because it's fun. Fun is a weird word for this episode, but it was fun to learn and grow in this way, even if it's not fun.
Yeah.
So
I guess.
We'll talk more and have a great day. I don't know what else to plug here.
Yeah.
Bye.
Keep going. Bye.